Hello, Knicks family. How are you doing? It is me, Ritholtzman, Ben Ritholtz, being joined, as always, by my good friend. He is the detail junkie. He's the doctor of jump shots. He's the decipherer of jargon. It is DJ Zullo the Great. How are you, sir? What's going on? How are you doing on this fine Monday evening,
Halloween Eve.
Hey.
Mischief night, I called it growing up. Devil's night, as I've been known to call it. Are you a big Halloween person? Are you going to be dressed up, decked out tomorrow?
So look, as a member of the tribe of the Jews, I do not celebrate Halloween. However, we do get our share of trick-or-treaters. We got the candy ready to go. We don't deny kids at the door. We're welcoming to all faiths and people. So we're gonna have a good time. My kids are totally freaking out. We got these next door neighbors with these crazy like things hanging from a noose. They don't know what he's 5. He's so scared. I don't know why people do this. I mean, I get that you want it to be scary, but they're young children, and they're scared
we have one house in the neighborhood that's got like all the dolls, like Chucky dolls, and like every like freaky, like imagine like a doll in your head of like, in the scary movies. They're just all over the yard, blood coming out of them, just mayhem.
It's like
and it's right across from the middle school. I'm sorry, right across from the elementary school.
I was gonna say middle school seems the elementary school.
No, middle school
terrifying.
This is the elementary school, and believe me, it's created a lot of like not only scared kids but conversations that you're not really as a parent prepared to have. But yeah, we'll be I'll be doing year 2 of Buddy the Elf, so I did that last year.
Nice.
I'll be doing that again this year. So
we look for you.
It is a good look for me. I can't pass out some candy canes on Halloween. It's always a crowd pleaser. But yeah, it's fun time of year. But basketball started and it is in full force. I feel like I'm not my muscle memory is not really accustomed to the amount of games that are on, let alone just focusing on these Knicks. So just happy to have some real games to sort of break down.
I know.
And dig our teeth into.
It's great to have actual basketball here to fill up our brains instead of the other nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks are kind of packing in the games in the early part of the schedule here, which is crazy. They're going to have their second iteration of 3 games in 4 nights coming up over this week, which is a lot. And, I think reasons to temper our expectations going forward. I think they got to squeeze out a few wins here, but just kind of stay above water. I'm sure you'd agree. But let me ask you this just right out of the gate. 3 games in, 1 and 2, nice win against Atlanta. I would say a decent to good performance against Boston, against a very good team, and then a dreadful performance with maybe some understandable circumstances against New Orleans.
Right.
Where are you at on this team 3 games in, if anywhere at all?
So I think I'm probably a little more positive than the 1 and 2 record would probably indicate for a couple of reasons. One, I just think, your 2 best players have been pretty rough overall. I mean, Julius especially, although the Atlanta game, even though he didn't shoot well, I thought he played a really good floor game. And Brunson, the shooting from 3's been good, but it's been, I think the defense has been like bad for even him. And he hasn't made a shot really in that 2-point range, and something that things you're just not going to expect to continue. So I'd expect both Randle, Brunson to play better. And I just think RJ has played well enough to where once those 2 guys join the mix and are playing up to their standard, you add that into what RJ's doing. And I think Mitch has been fantastic all 3 games. Yeah. I think there's enough with the depth on this team, which I think, Thibodeau is still trying to work out in terms of rotations and how they're going to figure all that, those pieces out. But I think overall, you think your 2 best players are going to play better. RJ's played really well so far over the first 3 games, and Mitch has been great. Grimes, we can get into in terms of his lack of involvement in any stretch of the imagination in offense. But overall, I think the team's played decently, and I think there's obviously a lot more to go. We're 3 games in. There's been a lot of variance with the jump shooting. The Atlanta game, they shot great. It went the complete opposite way in the New Orleans game.
Mm-hmm.
I think you had posted something from Shot Quality where these were open shots they were missing against New Orleans, and maybe
plenty of good looks. Good looks abound.
Yeah. They could, right? So maybe it was just tired legs back to back. So I think this team's still really good. I think I'm not gonna change my expectations in terms of upper 40s on the win total expectation. And I just think once Randle and Brunson sort of round into shape, they're gonna be fine. What do you think? What do you say?
No, I'm generally in the same boat. They have Cleveland coming up twice, but it sounds like on Tuesday they're going to be without Garland, without Allen. That becomes, and Mitchell's questionable.
Yes,
I mean, if Mitchell and Allen play, I think that's a game that Cleveland could win. Those two guys are really good.
Mm-hmm.
They have some decent surrounding talent, but it's a game that becomes like a should win, and then you hope at the worst you're splitting with that team if those guys even come back on Wednesday, and then you got Milwaukee after that. So. Or the Clippers. I don't remember, one of those two. So there's some tough games coming up. But yeah, just keep your head above water here. I think you have to assume certainly Brunson is going to come around. Julius, the every other year curse makes me a little worried, but we'll see. I think he's just got to just shoot the ball and worry about the results later. Just let it fly. But yeah, I'm generally with you. I'm not panicking at all. The Atlanta game I thought was really encouraging in a lot of ways. And even the New Orleans game where their offense was trash. They gave about less than 100 points to what I think projects to be a pretty good offensive team. I thought their defense was
decent,
fine. Was fine.
Right.
I think their defense generally has looked pretty good over the 3 games. Even Atlanta, I thought, although there were some lapses. So I don't know. I'm fine 3 games in. I think there's what to talk about in terms of trends, what's changed, what hasn't, where we can get better. But overall, yeah, I haven't changed one thought about this team. The main takeaway being Julius just has to be Julius.
And it sounds like you're a little more. It sounds like you're a little concerned about Julius. Not you're not panicking, but you are.
No.
You are worried. Is that the fair? Is that a fair?
Yeah?
A little
worried. Slightly concerned. Like I think.
Okay.
He's just because he's so. He's someone who is volatile, and it can go really bad if it's not. We don't have enough of a sample size of Julius Randle being a consistently all-star, all-NBA level player. It does kind of wane and wax around each year. We'll see. And a lot of it comes down to if he's not a competent jump shooter, a lot of the other stuff goes away, especially in this context where he can't really roll to the rim, where there's not the spacing. So it's the reason he was so successful last season was because he just gunned away from 3, at least earned defense's respect from there, which opened up everything else. And then he, against Atlanta, he did a great job spreading the ball around. That he can still do, but it all becomes easier if the jump shot is respected. And I think he's got to get back to that place. And yeah, am I slightly concerned that it's not going to be there this year? You never know with him. I hope it is though. So anyway,
I think just to kind of last thing on sort of our first thoughts, I really think we're looking at RJ. Lots been made about RJ, and he's been really good. And I'm sure there'll be questions we can dive in. But to me, Mitch has been just so solid these 3 games, and seems like everything is kind of coming together in terms of his discipline, his ability, playing that drop defense, and then also rebounding the ball on the defensive end has just been fantastic. And then he's sort of eliminated, at least early on, some of those offensive rebounds and just sort of flailing a layup at the rim just to get a shot up. Those haven't really been there. And I just think that he's just seems so solid and consistent right now. And, I don't know if this means all defense team consideration, but I just think that, he's making up for a lot of deficiencies on that starting lineup. And he's just been so solid, and Hartenstein has been good as well. So the Knicks are really blessed to have just, 48 minutes of just really solid center play night in, night out. And it's been a real boost to this team. And it's just something they can really fall back on every game.
No notes, 100%, 100%. That's been a silver lining for sure. All right, well, let's head to whatever questions anybody has. We'll try to address them the best we can. Andrew P starts us off. Thanks, Andrew. Can you guys please help me understand the lack of motion, pace, and creativity for their half-court offense? Everything is slow and repetitive. What am I missing? Oh boy, there's a start. What is he missing? What is he missing, DJ?
Several years of questions just like this.
Yes.
I just think I feel like we're kind of beating the same drum over and over again, but they do get a lot of offense out of their the fact that even though they're not playing great, but Randle and Brunson, they do command a lot of attention, and that those swings out of those isolations that where they get two to the ball, they end up giving Grimes or RJ shots at the basket, naked shots, wide open shots. That these are the sort of plays that I think if you're the head coach, you have that in your bag. And I know there's this opportunity for more diversity in your offense, but my thing is like this starting lineup really isn't blessed with a lot of creative offensive players in terms of their cutting, their off-ball movement. The second unit, I think, does have a little bit more of that, especially with the DiVincenzo in the mix. But the fact that remains, like, out of isolations and post-ups, they Brunson and Randle, they get a lot of attention. Those plays usually end up with an open shot, and then it's a make or miss league at that. And then you have the Mitchell Robinson factor of the fact he can clean so many things up. This offense is never going to be diverse, and I especially in the starting lineup. And I just think that if they're making their shots and Randle and Brunson are playing well, this is going to be a really good offense. And I think, we're now a few years into it, or 2 years into the Brunson Randle pairing. This is sort of what it's going to be. Then maybe your second unit with the pace that quickly brings and the cutting that DiVincenzo. I mean, he can't make a layup, but he will cut to the basket and he'll be open for one. I mean, that those sort of things. And Josh Hart, fast break and in those bump Euros in transition. There's certain things the second unit can do. But I just think we're at a situation where this first team offense, they're gonna have to make shots, and they're gonna do it out of those whatever Randle and Brunson are gonna sort of like kick off and then make plays out of there.
Yeah, in terms of pace, I mean, right now so far through 3 games, which no stats should be taken seriously, but they're 18th in pace. Last year they were 3rd to last in the league, I think. So. It's up a little bit.
Yeah.
They've started in the past this way too, and then they slow down as the year goes on. But, I think the pace generally comes with the second unit. I think sometimes when it comes to this, I think it comes down to personnel largely. I think if you look at especially the starting lineup, you have players in Brunson, Randle, and RJ who soak up 90% of your usage, who are like to dribble. They're good, not great passers. None of them. And they're all kind of late passers. None of them are like anticipatory passers, really. And what they are good at is getting into the paint and drawing defenses. So the Knicks design a lot of plays, and to their credit, I think I don't think it's credited enough. The amount of different actions they have, especially for RJ, at a pistol and then variations off a pistol, elbow sets, etc., to get him kind of downhill, especially to his left side. That's what opens things up for him. You talk about Randle. I mean, they run a lot of stuff from the left side of the floor, trying to get him, where he can get to his right side jump shot, get to the middle of the floor, pass out. Brunson, they run pick and rolls generally. There's not much like variation there, but like, look, it was really successful last year. He's really good at it. And then when the pick and rolls, when there's a switch, they end up in an isolation, but those isolations draw defenders, and as you mentioned, get the kickouts or the drop offs to Mitch, etc. It was effective. And then and then you get the Mitch offensive rebounds. I think when you inject a lot of pace or variety or complexity to an offense, you do risk certain things that the Knicks don't want to risk, and that's turnovers. And that's bad decision-making. And again, with personnel like Randle, especially, who are prone to some bad decision-making, you really want things to be simple. They tried to get Randle in that kind of like hub passing mode in year 2 under Tibbs, and it didn't go well with Fournier and Kemba. Like, it just didn't go well. Like, it's not his strong suit. You're going to get some bad turnovers. Hell, look at what happened against New Orleans. You have to really simplify it for him. Randle has said himself that the part of the success he's had under Tibbs is how simple the reads have been for him. They've really carved out an offense that plays to his strengths. So again, we've said this a million times. I think there could be more complexity. There could add some stuff and sets that, it's pretty much the same offense as last year. They haven't changed really a darn thing about it. But the second unit brings a little bit more variety, a little more spontaneity. You see that, a little more ball movement. By the way, higher risk of turnovers. And more pace. And the team kind of has always functioned as 2 different units in that sense. And I think that's okay. I think more importantly right now is that the guys that thrived in this offense last year start to thrive again. And that's Julius and Brunson, of course.
Yeah. And there's been a couple of plays, that you mentioned the RJ pistol action where he's seems to be a little more, and I haven't looked at every one, but it just seems like he's rejecting that screen a little more often. And when teams overplay it, try to take away that left hand, he's just hitting that seam going right. And I think he has a little more confidence in his ability to finish in those situations where it's a play that I think he'll go to more. And that, you're running the same action, but there's a different variety, different sort of counter out of that, which I think he can continue to go to. And then out of that same action, Brunson, maybe keep the ball a little bit, instead of pitching that to RJ, just keep the ball. Then you potentially have an ISO situation in a 2-point area where he can get to a mid-range, step back. Maybe that adds, quickly we'll keep it sometimes and sort of maybe get downhill. So there are certain plays you can run that are your pet actions, but maybe have different counters out of those. We're already seeing some glimpses of that. And even in the Boston game, I thought Hartenstein, there were some nice backdoor cuts with him and Julius. Didn't bear any fruit because Julius couldn't finish at the basket, but because Porzingis was just erasing everything. But there was, a few different occasions in that Boston game where they were kind of sort of using Hartenstein as a little bit more of a passing, outlet and passing hub, and trying to make those plays, get some guys some easy baskets. So, you don't have to necessarily have to change your offense, but you can do different things out of those actions that you have run, several years now.
100%. And they have. And I think especially against Atlanta, there was some nice variety off of the same actions, right? There are counters to everything. And no matter how complex their offense, there are some very standard things like, you do whatever your defender is trying to do to you, you do the opposite, right? He's giving you the back door, take the back door. He's top blocking you, backdoor him. If he's underplaying you, come over the screen. Like this offense has all of those elements. It's just a matter of being efficient and executing them correctly. And I think you'll get all the shots that you want out of it. Now, one thing I will say is sometimes the bad habits, this kind of it exacerbates some of the bad habits that the team has. So that if you are a pretty, simple offense, let's say, and it does give a lot of freedom to your main ball handlers, sometimes the ball gets really sticky. And that's not to their advantage. And there are sometimes where just swing it to the weak side. Often they attract so much attention, especially Brunson when he's on, they load up on him. Just a simple swing to the weak side. You got 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s on the weak side where you can make something happen with a pin-in screen. You saw one play that I freaking loved where DiVincenzo sets a pin-in screen for RJ. RJ catches the guy, closes out. He hits DiVincenzo in the pocket for a layup. Things like that. I think Hartenstein injects a lot of those kinds of spontaneous decisions, and Mitch just doesn't have that in his game, right? It's another limitation. Right. He just doesn't have that type of offensive skill set that you can really do a lot. Like, he pretty much has to be in the dunker spot, getting offensive rebounds, which he's great at. But again, it does limit kind of how much motion you can really run. So it's a combination of a lot of things. I think we're seeing the foundation of what could be a very good offense again, with some better decision making and then just shot making, as we said.
Yeah. And I also think that you watch the Nuggets, you watch the Warriors. I mean, these are, you're talking about four of the greatest offensive players. I mean, Jokic is, all world. And then you have, obviously the Warriors have two of the greatest shooters of all time and an amazing, all NBA passer in Draymond Green. I mean, these guys can do certain things because they just inject so much terror into, any defense. So if they're moving and everything is sort of, as you mentioned, exasperated because you're just so fearful that if you do lose contact with someone, it's an open three or a back door. And it just, the Knicks aren't blessed with those guys, but I think a lot of teams sort of run similar sets that the Knicks do. And I don't think the Knicks are necessarily, behind the times. I just think that, there are certain teams that run a lot of variety because they have players that can do that. And maybe the coach is certainly a part of that, but I think to your point, it's a matter of just like countering off what the team is defense is giving you and making the correct reads, whether it's rejecting a screen. I mean, I'm seeing so much of like guys jumping screens and just inviting the rejection. And then guy like Brunson will do that. He'll take it. RJ is getting better at it, but a lot of times he wants to get to the screen because it's to his comfort zone. It's to his left hand. Reject that screen, get downhill. Then if the team your defense is collapsing on you, make that kick out. But those are the counters that you just have to be in your game. And I think I'm seeing some signs of that from RJ. Hopefully he can continue to build on that.
Yeah. And look, there's 17 to 20 teams every year whose fan bases think they should move the ball more. It's like probably the primary complaint you see. There are, again, as you mentioned, the offenses that are like really ball movement intensive now, like it's gone out of style a bit. A lot of teams run just like high pick and roll over and over and over again. the teams that you watched, you're like, wow, they're running really creative stuff. Or like Sacramento, Golden State, Denver, OKC, maybe, although it's a lot of Shea.
Yeah. And even the Warriors, they've kind of tamped down on it a little bit because just their personnel has changed a little bit over the years. And, they're just, it's, Chris Paul has been, he brings a certain, style to the game that is going to be a little bit different than they're used to. So you're right. It's not a lot of teams that run these high motion offenses. It's pretty rare. And, more teams are just going to sort of like play to the strengths. And this league is blessed with a lot of great scorers that can just get buckets. And sometimes that is just that's going to limit turnovers. That's going to, probably get you a good shot. And it's sort of like,
simple but effective, right?
Simple but effective, right?
Yeah. All right. Let's get the next question up. Take it, DJ.
All right, Manny Campos. The spacing feels cramped, more cramped than usual. Is that really the case? And is that causing all the poor shooting, or do you think it's really just early season rust? So we think we touched on a little bit with the fact they missed so many open shots, but are you thinking this is more of a spacing issue, or just maybe early season variance, or just as Manny put it, just early season rust?
Yeah, I'll say I have noticed that, Manny. I think teams are really loading up on Brunson, maybe in a way that they didn't last season. I think he's proven himself now over a playoff run, and I think he's probably garnering respect that he on a different level. And I think teams are really happy to let Julius chuck away, RJ chuck away, Grimes they'll pay closer attention to, and then Mitch, as we know, they'll load up off of Mitch as well. So yeah, I mean, Brunson's playing in really tight spaces all the time. And the good news is he's one of the best in the league at playing in those tight spaces because he's so quick. He's so jittery. He's so spatially aware. Like, it's incredible to what he can do in very tight windows, but that's one of his great strengths. And I think that's going to be a recurring issue, especially in the starting lineup. Where you really have off of Brunson. When Brunson has the basketball, you have one shooter who teams are probably really concerned about. Right. That is just a reality of this starting lineup. I think they can make it work. I think with the offensive rebounding that Mitch gives you, you make up for a lot of it. As long as you don't turn the basketball over, you get shots on goal, and then you go crash the net, right? You go try to get the rebounds. I think they'll be fine. But yeah, I do. I think I've sensed that as well. I don't have any way to prove it, but I also have sensed a really shrinking of the space here for the Knicks this season.
Yeah, well, I think as you're talking about, I'm sort of like the games are running through my head, and I'm wondering if there's a little more size being thrown at Brunson this year. I mean, it definitely was in the Pelicans game. I mean, he had Herb Jones on him a lot, and that is like the one thing where he struggles a little bit. It's size, inside the arc. So, and I think that might give it's not necessarily an illusion, but just make it seem like his space that he's trying to occupy is a little bit tighter. Yes, the teams are certainly, paying more attention, overloading to his side. But when you have 6'8", 6'7" wings guarding him, I think that might enhance this idea that he might not be playing with the same amount of pace that he had last year. So I just think that's something to maybe monitor, because I think that's the one thing with him where if he's going to struggle, typically it's going to be inside the arc, and it's going to be lanky, long size that he cannot necessarily, gain a great advantage. And then he's shooting over the top of, guys 3-4 inches taller than him. And I think that's when it could be a little bit tougher. Not to say I'm worried about it. It might be something where he might be adjusting to that idea where now he's the marked man, so to speak, and he's going to have the teams, if they can do it, they're going to have their best defender on him. And they're going to just, let the other guys, as you mentioned, try to beat them. But, maybe the fact that he's trying to oversize a little more, maybe that is sort of making this idea that there isn't as much space more of a reality. Something to keep an eye on, at least.
No, for sure. They're going to throw their wings at him. I think Herb was tough. I think Boston, because they put Holiday on Randle, I feel like Derek White was on him most of the game. I mean, he's a very good defensive player, really good defensive player, but not necessarily. But they switched, and Tatum spent time on him. Jaylen Brown spent time on him, all wings. DeJounte Murray, I think, guarded him the majority of the Hawks game. And I think
that was Brunson's best game. Yeah,
Brunson
he had his way.
I mean, DeJounte's tough defender, but also God, I just watched that game because I missed it Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
What they did to Trae Young, it
Bro.
was honestly one of the worst defensive performances I have ever watched anybody have. And it was in every single facet. On the ball, anytime they got a switch on him, they destroyed him. If he was the weak side help, they just threw the ball up to Mitch. Grimes just rose and fired over him like 4 times.
From the corner. Where Trae's attached to him. He's attached to him.
And
he's just right on him.
You're Trae Young. I'm just going to shoot. I don't care.
And you talked about that in one of the early season shows we did, where you just want Grimes to just shoot the ball, even if he's covered, especially out of that what's it, the left? Which corner
left
is
corner.
he?
Yeah,
left corner, right? Where he's like 45%. So just let it go.
Let it go, man. And look, that's the other side to the throwing wings at Brunson thing. Is okay. Now your point guards for teams that have kind of weak spots are always on Grimes, and he's got to take advantage. And that's there are two sides to it. Can he? Yes. Does he get the ball enough to? Those are important questions to ask. And
well, one of the things that hurts Brunson when he's guarding the other wing is that they'll run him around screens, and he can. I mean, especially that Miami series, he just got bludgeoned trying to hang, and the Knicks just don't have that sort of.
By the way, talk about easy ways to diversify the offense. To me, that's always been it. It's like you can run Grimes off some actions, man. Like give him a chance. Like, I'm not sure yet how much juice he has catching and making a play, but I want to see it. And he's a good enough shooter where like he can come off and just nail shots. Just run some like wide actions for him in semi-transition. Like, go get him. Like they used to say, like, I don't know. I was a shooter. Like we'd come down the floor and the coach would go get him, go get him. Someone would come set a freaking screen for me. It's such easy offense. Sometimes the guy's not ready, especially in transition. You're open for three, like just simple stuff like that, like wide actions, like nothing fancy, but like even out of just like he doesn't have to just like freaking run to the corner and stand there until he gets a touch. That's definitely a frustrating element to me, and like he just gets lost for extremely large stretches of a game where he does not get any touches, and that goes to just a unwillingness at times to just swing the ball to the weak side and get him involved, which we talked about, and the personnel not being a very pass happy personnel, like all of it comes into play. And then to the coaching staffs, some blame goes to the coaching staff in terms of a lack of imagination to get him going. But we got sidetracked. The point being that against Trae Young, it was just like, if he catches it, just rise up and shoot because Trae's not. Anyway, they destroyed Trae Young in that game. It's kind of, it has nothing to do with Manny's question, but I just wanted to point all right, let's hit the next question, shall we? Ben, how you doing, Ben? Always good to hear from you, buddy. Why do you think Randle is back to his spin into traffic, take a highly contested shot, aka the spit take ways? I like that. He is up to 5-6 a game so far this season. Thoughts on Randle's turnover woes, DJ?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start with the positive side of it. First of all, I don't think it's 5 to 6. I mean, that's a lot of post-ups. I mean, I don't think he's getting that many post-ups in general. And I don't think those are turning into those types of spin into traffic where it's a blind spin and then you get the ball knocked away. But I will say this, especially in the Atlanta game, and you may think teams are crazy, but the fact is he's 6'9", 250. He's going to bring help. Yep. And I can sit there and we've watched him for how many years, and we're like, why are teams doubling him? But thank you for doing it. But why are you paying so much attention? But teams will bring help. So the fact that they can get open shots out of it, to me, is worth doing. And obviously he's got to make better decisions out of when he isn't passing the ball, taking shots that are efficient and good looks. And, he is not a highly efficient post player. He's just isn't. We're going on a few years of him not being that. So that is something where, if he's not on the left side of the court and sort of like getting into the middle of the lane and maybe drawing a foul and getting that little mid-range from the middle of the lane up and in, I don't think there's a lot that he can necessarily go to that I would call like a highly efficient shot. But I think with that said, if he's backing down, especially wings that have been put on him, he's going to draw help, and that's going to bring some attention his way, and he's going to kick it out for hopefully an open shooter. So, he's got to make better decisions out of these attempts. But I think the Knicks, need his post-up threat because teams really do respect it. And I think that if you watch that Atlanta game in that third quarter, he was spraying the ball all over the court. And the Knicks were hitting those shots, and it was just beautiful offense. And even when they're not hitting them, I think you just have to continue to generate open looks. And it's, as we've talked about now, that's one of the few ways the Knicks can consistently do that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he tore Atlanta up, to be honest. Like, I thought he was great in that game, passing the ball. And, that's 1 out of 3 games. That's a third of his games. I thought he played a really good game against Atlanta. I know he didn't make shots, but, like, I'm not getting carried away yet for that reason. I think part of it is that he's got to just shoot. He's got to just shoot. And the pump fake where guys don't actually contest and then he dribbles into them is a recipe for turnovers. That we saw that a lot against New Orleans, where like a lot of those kind of pump and goes, like pump and go is supposed to be like a threat. So I pump and the guy goes for my shot and then I drive past him. But if I'm just pumping and the guy's still in front of me and then I go, it doesn't translate to much success or advantage creation. So like launch the ball, Julius. Like again, there's a reason the coaching staff empowered him to do that, even though he's not a great shooter. Shot 34%. But they're like, shoot the ball because it's healthier for our offense to get those shots up than some of the things that come after. He's got to be willing to just shoot. If he's 0 for 5, go 0 for 8. Just let him go because he'll have a 7 for 8 game at some point. Like it's going to come. It'll even out. But he's got to just let it fly and not lose confidence in that jumper because as we said at the beginning, that's the starting point that allows a lot of the other stuff to open up. So I'm not panicking yet, but just shoot the ball. Don't drive into oncoming traffic. There's no reason to do it. Like if you don't want to shoot it, then just like pivot into a dribble handoff. Don't just dribble into. But like we're gonna get a heavy dose of Randle post ups because it works for the Knicks. Like they get good shots out of it often. Like I don't want to overreact to the New Orleans game in particular, which was particularly horrendous.
I agree. And just to kind of put some numbers to it, just looking at synergy, they have him at 16 post-ups, including passes. The Knicks are 8 for 16. That's a 65% effective field goals out of those, Randle post-ups where he's either shot it or passed the ball out. I mean, you're going to take that any day of the week, and you're going to deal with some of the bad turnovers out of those. But generally, I think it's a positive for the offense.
All right, what we got? Brian Valderrama. Sorry, DJ, take it away.
No, thank you. Best way for the Knicks to get Grimes involved. How many shots should he average a game? So I think we've kind of answered this a few times as we've talked about. But I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. It's like if Brunson, Randle, RJ, it's just their job to find him. You had one of my favorite tweets of the year so far.
Thanks. What was it?
Well, it was the one where the Knicks, I think it was the Knicks PR Twitter account making a note that the Knicks extended or picked up his 4th-year option, and you responded snarkily, perfectly that maybe Randle, RJ, and Brunson can exercise Grimes as an option, and it was
no snark. There was no snark. It was just a very calmly written.
And it was well said, and I think it's a perfect way to encapsulate sort of Grimes being lost a little bit in this offense. That we've talked about the fact that they don't run a lot of actions for him. It wasn't a major weapon last year, but that dribble handoff where he starts on the left wing and he kind of moves to his right, and Julius hands the ball off, and he can sort of set that screen as he's handing it off, and Grimes got a lot of open looks out of that, and he's a good shooter going to his right. So that is one way to get him some looks. And then beyond that, it's like, all right, if he's in transition, runs to the line and have guys, but then it's like, all right, who's finding him? RJ's been great in transition this year, but a lot of it's just been for him, and that's great. And that's carrying over from his FIBA run where he was fantastic in transition as a finisher. So keep doing that. But, for Grimes to get more shots up, it's going to be, your main 3 guys finding him, and then the Knicks run, kind of helping him out, running some actions for him. But, in terms of the second part, how many shots should he average a game? Listen, I thought he would average under 10 this year, which I think most people will consider a disappointment coming into the season. So if he can get upwards of, between 11 and 13, I just think that's, I think that's a reasonable number considering his placement on the team. In terms of what option he's going to be most times.
Yeah, look, I mean, he's at 7.3 after these 3 games per game. He was at 8.5 last year per game. It's not that big a drop off, especially considering that he's playing 5 minutes less a game so far this season. He played 30 last year. He's playing 25 on the dot this year. And that is a result of having Dante DiVincenzo around and a lot of wings with Josh Hart and RJ and quickly eating into his minutes. So like, he's not good. Like, it's not, if he's playing 25 a game, your best hope is 9, is 8.5 to 9. Like, it's not getting higher than that. That's with the other guys on this team. I already mentioned one way I think he get more shots is kind of running some very simple stuff for him, especially in transition. And looks, I don't want to repeat myself. So like we talked already about how we like to get him more looks, passing the ball to the weak side a little bit more. One thing I'll say is like he needs to take advantage of his opportunities too. Like there are times where he has a gap or off one of those DHOs with Julius, for example, and he just takes one dribble and passes it back to Julius. Like there is a bit of a fear to do more than that at times from him. And he's in a tough spot, man. And by the way, he only plays with the starters. Like the way his rotation goes, like he's out early and he's back in end of half, end of game if he gets back in the end of game. So like he literally only plays with Julius and Brunson. He doesn't get to run with that more free-flowing second unit at all. Like you think about the shots that DiVincenzo gets versus the shots that Grimes gets. It's just because the offense is so different when you have Hartenstein and you have Josh Hart and DiVincenzo who are ball movers. So like he's in a very tough spot. And overall he's excelled. And I don't want to underscore that. Like he had a really good year last year. And it's a tough spot that I think he's going to have to just like kind of persevere through, find his shots when he gets the opportunities. Hopefully the coaching staff enables him a bit more. Hopefully the stars get him more involved and make more of a conscious effort, but he's also got to take advantage of the opportunities he does get.
Yeah. And I don't want to, I'm not saying he plays fearful, but I think that there is probably an element of him just not wanting to make a mistake because I think his whole MO as an offensive player since he's been a Knick has just been, take what's been given to you, make the right play, don't do too much, stay within yourself. And I feel like when he's had to sort of break out of that shell, you've seen like all he could do certain things that are different and unique, but generally speaking, I think he has just been pigeonholed a little bit to the point where I think when he gets those DHOs and he has a seam, he doesn't feel confident that he can sort of explore those spaces because he's just really, I think, conscientious of making mistakes. And I think that's part of the thing that he has to sort of grow out of. But right now, he has to make open shots, play defense. He's going to help this team win a lot of games. But beyond that, I just don't know if he definitely hasn't been given that leash. And I think it's just hard for us to expect more of him because the team is not asking him to do more than that. And I think that's been part of the balance that, he's probably trying to strike and the team is trying to strike as well.
Well said. Well said. All right. Let's see the next question. Andrew P. back. Thank you so much for the contribution. You guys are awesome. Do this as often as possible. Man. Wow.
Andrew. Wow. Talk about
is Andrew is Claudio's middle name start with a P? Is that him just chiming in?
It is not.
Andrew Phineas Claudio. Oh, Macri's back. That is actually Jonathan Macri. Can I confirm? Hey, John. He says, listening to you guys while double screening Golden State versus New Orleans and Chicago, Indiana. Hoops heaven. I kind of wanted your undivided attention, Macri. So, what player's performance, if anyone, have you legitimately concerned for the rest of the season? Oh, man. Wow. We talked about Randle already.
Yeah.
But I'm not legitimately concerned. I'm slightly concerned. Is that the same? Is that legitimate? Maybe it's legitimate, but I'm not that concerned. Is there someone else? Yeah. I think we talked a lot about Randle. Is there someone else you have in mind?
So let's just talk through it then. Josh Hart has been okay, but he hasn't necessarily been the Josh Hart that sort of lit the Knicks on fire when he came over last year. I feel like there is something missing with him. I'm not concerned because I think his minutes have, he obviously had there were some rest things coming into the preseason, coming off FIBA. He might not be necessarily at his peak performance in terms of just his, athletic ability. He just seems like a step slow. Doesn't seem like he is impacting the game the same way. But I think that is one of those things where I just feel like it'll work itself out. There's no injury that I would be concerned of in terms of Josh Hart. And then beyond that, I will say the DiVincenzo passing and layup botching.
Oh man, the layups! Come on.
I mean, it's a problem, and I knew it was a problem. The missed layup specifically, but it just feels like he is getting, and maybe it'll work itself out to where he starts to make a little more. But it just feels like he is missing every layup where he has to go to the second side rim, and he's it's that reverse with the right hand that I think he's probably missed 3 or 4 of those shots alone at the basket, which is a shame because I mentioned his cutting. He injects so much variety into this offense, but he's just not converting these shots. So I would just say it's a small concern, but his finishing ability. And then I know you touched on it before early on. I think it was before game 1 where about he's a good passer, but he's a daring passer. Something to watch out for, especially when you pair him with Josh Hart. Keep an eye on that. He gets up in the air, and then there's been a lot of deflections that aren't turnovers, especially in that Pelicans game. Things where, he a few almost steals, and those things, we deflect the ball, it just kind of disrupts your whole offense. So I would just say no major concerns, but those 2 little aspects that DiVincenzo's game, little concerned.
Yeah, I'll pick up on the Josh Hart thread that you started there. He's another guy. He played 30 minutes a night for the Knicks last year. And part of that was RJ Barrett struggling during regular season and therefore not finishing games. And Josh Hart would finish a lot of games for them. Finished every game for them, basically, once he came over. And now he's not, or hasn't yet. And I don't think Tibbs is locked into a closing lineup. I think based on how things are going, he'll probably change things up, but he has closed RJ all 3 games. I mean, he couldn't really close anyway with New Orleans. But you get what I'm saying. Yep. And it's harder. It is difficult to find a rhythm and make your impact in 22 minutes. It's harder to do than it is in 30 minutes. And what is the role? I mean, he's playing basically the 4 now. He's less of a focus with DiVincenzo doing a lot of the handling, and you have RJ on those units. So it's RJ, DiVincenzo quickly all have the ball more than him. So it's just where is his impact coming from? He's got to get those offensive rebounds, keep plays alive. Hasn't been as dynamic in transition. And I actually wonder if finally, for the first time in his career, teams have figured out to sit on that left to right sweep through move that he does every single time, because he hasn't really made one yet this year. And that might be our fault for publicizing it too much. But he just hasn't been as dynamic. He has said that he's, pretty tired following, playing all summer. So take that into consideration. Trying to find a new role with a new unit as basically the 4th option. Even Hartenstein might have the ball more than he does. So he's trying to carve out that role that impacts winning in the same way, and it might be tough to do. So definitely something to monitor there. The Obi for DiVincenzo swap, as far as team continuity goes, is not a big deal. Most teams have a lot more turmoil and turnover than that, but it does kind of rejigger a lot of things for this team, and they're definitely still sifting through that and trying to figure out where each player fits in. So something to look out for.
Yeah, and then I know we touched on it, but I guess I would say a season-long concern would have to be not to beat a dead horse, but just the fact that Grimes is not enough of a threat, not a threat, but he's just not involved enough. I don't see that changing necessarily in a big way. So I can chalk that one up to being a full season concern for sure.
Fair enough. Thanks, John.
Thank you. All right. Manny is back. Manny Campos, thank you again for contributing. Is RJ finally making the leap? His finishing looks better and his decision-making is improved. Does he sustain this? Benji, go ahead. Take it. What do you think? Has the RJ made the leap?
I don't know.
Or making the leap.
Look.
It could be a small leap. It doesn't have to be
a
big
leap.
I
think he's shown great improvement. I think, look, I go back to the playoffs last season. I'm not starting that game 1 this season. I thought he made a tremendous improvement for a large stretch of the playoffs last season. That showed me something. I said it at the time. What he did in the playoffs moved me more than what I saw from him in 4 regular seasons before. Like, I saw where the impact comes from, what type of player he could be. The finishing looks, I think, probably better. I think more like, I just think he's, as I've always said, I think it's just balancing when to actually attack the rim and try to finish, and when to kick and when to move the ball. I feel like he's making smarter decisions in that sense. I think he's, as you mentioned before, DJ, getting to his right hand more, where I think he's just, man, I just think he's, I don't want to say he's better going right, because it is his weak hand and he doesn't like to go that way. But when he goes that way, it feels like there's more optionality. He has more of a pace and a cadence to him, where like the passing comes from, and there's just like more patience, and he can end up sweeping back to his left, or he can stay with his right hand. He has that little in and out dribble with his right hand to kind of freeze the defender. I always like him going that way better, just in terms of how he plays. When he goes left, he just has this tendency to just go right at the rim and try to make a tough lefty layup. With his right hand, there's just a little bit more cadence to his game. So like, I've seen all of that. It looks good. And I've loved the way he's played. I think the decision-making all in all has been much better and is carried over from the playoffs. So yeah, I don't know what the leap means, but he's making a leap. I've seen a legitimate improvement in his game. That is an extremely exciting thing to see as a Knicks fan.
Yeah, I agree. And I would just echo everything you just said and ask you this question. The jump shooting, what his FIBA game, his performance, I thought his jump shot looked pretty good. It's been changed, it's been altered. I think it's looked pretty good so far this year. He's making his free throws, I think 14 out of 17. How are you feeling about his jump shooting, specifically just off the catch?
Oh, specifically off the catch. So that's a good qualifier. I know, our friend Prez has been all over this. There's been a tremendous mechanical change. I haven't seen it to a great extent. It does seem maybe a little bit smoother. He's shooting so far, he's 37.5%. Pretty good. I'll take it. Take that over the full season. I'd be thrilled. I think it does look a little bit better. I'm going to expand on your question, though. Some of the interesting stuff that I've seen is the off the dribble shooting mid range that I do not want him to start like relying on as like a regular shot that he takes. However, in a pinch, it's like a really important shot, and like when he needs it, and to see him kind of smoothly transitioning, kind of gathering and shooting, which is something he's always struggled with. It's always looked really mechanical off the dribble. Yep. From the mid-range, at least, it's looked much better. He made that huge one on the left baseline, which I was shocked that he took over DeAndre Hunter late in the Atlanta game. He had one on the opposite side of the court, on the right corner, I think against Boston, where he just the guy went under the screen on the baseline. He kind of in and out of dribble, a little step back baseline jumper that he knocked down. So that stuff's looked really good and kind of an interesting little improvement to his game that, again, I don't want him to rely on too heavily, but at least gives him another option when teams are really daring him to shoot. So yeah, all good signs. We'll see about, I've never been a RJ jumper optimist. I don't know if he'll ever be a really good shooter. And for me, honestly, the most important thing out of everything we've talked about is that he's shooting 83% from the line. And like, if that sustains, that's a huge, huge deal for this team if he becomes a really reliable free throw shooter. Yep.
And he shot well in the preseason. So
yeah,
at that end, it's been a good run of free throw shooting. And then just to put a bow on the RJ conversation, his defense, I think, has been pretty good this year overall.
Yes.
And then, I don't know why it's sort of like he turned the switch off last year and what happened. It's a mystery. And then it's an aspect to his game, which was pretty good in the playoffs. So it's just why in the regular season last year was he so poor as a defender? I don't know that. I don't have the answer, but he's been pretty good this year. And, if he can just sustain the decision-making, the passing, is he the best at getting the ball to the weak side shooter on the team right now, making that pass? He's done it a few times.
Yeah,
6'7".
He will.
It's not. it's not like he's not amazing at it, but I feel confident where, if he draws a defense, he can get that ball over to that corner with pretty good velocity and accuracy. And I just think Brunson struggles at that pass, and there's just no one else really on the roster. Josh Hart maybe every once in a while can do it, but beyond that,
it doesn't run a lot of pick and roll.
No, he doesn't.
And then
but
DiVincenzo might, but he might throw it 6 rows up for all the other.
Exactly.
That dude scares me. And Tibbs is gonna blow up at one of these. Like he and Josh Hart are just chucking the ball around. They've had like several just like miscommunication, throw out of bounds kinds of plays, and Tibbs looks like he's going to kill one or both of them, or like just go to Villanova and burn down the gym. One of those. He's gonna do one of those things.
And they make up for it, I guess, with like all the other stuff they do to sort of
that is the positive spin, but it's
but it's maddening.
A lot.
It's maddening. Yeah, so it's a lot.
It's a good point. I honestly, with RJ, I'd like him to 100. He's done it really well this year. Sometimes even earlier, like that kick is there. If he just like, sometimes you see like the best pat, like Luka does this once in a while, where like he'll just freaking fling that thing to the weak side corner before the defense even moves. Just like RJ's got the size and the strength to do that. And it's just about kind of like recognizing it and seeing it early enough where you just kind of sling that ball. Grimes might be open in that left corner right off your initial pistol. Like you don't even have to get middle of the floor. Like your first dribble, defense commits or starts leaning even, and you just gun that ball to the weak side corner. Another way to get Grimes maybe some more shots.
Yeah, and if it's a point guard guarding Grimes and he's closing, but it's a point guard. 6'2", he can get over and rise up and make that shot. Yep.
That's right. All right, let's see the next question here. I think we got a couple more. Ben's back. Hey, Ben. How is Brunson getting called for flopping constantly when he's a small dude whose path is constantly impeded by bigger guys? DJ, ref corner, hit it.
Yeah, so to me, the flopping has been, unless I'm missing something, more of the landing on the foot or lack thereof, and then flopping out of those actions, which to me is like, they have to just clean up what a flop is, because I don't know if I know this has happened to you. If you step on someone's foot coming up for a shot, or you fear that happening, that is a scary situation for a shooter. So if you come down on someone's foot, I mean, there are just few things on the NBA court that's going to like be as like, it's going to cause you to panic as much as that. So I can see him being wary of the fact that in that Miami series, and I'm sure this is in the back of his mind, how many times did he step on Martin's foot? I mean, there's at least 3 or 4 that I can remember, and rarely called, complaining the entire time. And then this season, it's been like 2 or 3 times where he stepped on, he's come down on someone's foot, and he's flailing a little bit, and maybe he's exaggerating the movement coming down, but that is just a very disconcerting position that referees are now putting him in, where if you're not going to call those, and you're not allowing him to sort of sell it, then he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. What is he supposed to do in that situation? To me, it's been a really just like maddening aspect to this early season. The fact that refs have missed calls. Yes, he had one where he didn't necessarily land on, I forget what game it was. It might've been the Pelicans game where there wasn't any foot to foot action, but he was just off balance and sort of came down on one, coming off one foot. Maybe that just threw him off. Didn't necessarily feel like something that necessitated like a flopping call in that situation. So I don't know. That just seems like something where I can see how he is extremely frustrated, and it's been probably building since the Miami series, to be honest.
Yeah. We've lost the plot on this rule. It was instituted because Zaza Pachulia very intentionally stepped under a Kawhi Leonard jumper and knocked Kawhi out of the playoffs. He might've been the best player in the league at that point and knocked him out for the playoffs. The whole idea is to protect that exact play. Shooters, therefore, started doing all sorts of crazy things, like kicking out their legs in crazy ways, shifting their hips as they shot to try to get bumped as they shot, coming around screens, and before a defender could even back away, jumping into them, all that crap, the Trae Young crap, frankly, that was a result of these landing rule areas. So now they had to call flops. The problem is you can't call flops when on the plays where the call was designed in the first place. Like landing on the guy's foot was the reason the rule was instituted. That led to all this garbage that led to you trying to get flopping out of the game. But now you're losing the plot in the first place. If a guy's landing on someone's foot, that's a foul. Not only is it a foul, it could be a flagrant. Jason Tatum's could have been a flagrant because he stepped forward as Brunson's landing in a very, very natural shooting motion. And Brunson Brunson's foot did what my foot has done a gazillion times after a jump shot. When you land on someone's foot, you try to take your weight off of it and kick it up in the air. That's all that was. That was a horrendous call at a big point in the game that could have been a 5-point swing in that game. So, like, that was horrible. That was horrible, and we're losing the plot here. Like, the first thing that you're policing is making sure that a guy's not stepping in the landing area. Work from there. But, like, that's the baseline. So they need to freaking figure that out. Thanks for getting me on that rant, Ben.
Yeah, I love that.
All right.
Couldn't agree more.
Let's see the next question. If we have any more. John.
All right, one more. Non-Knicks question. All right. Watching the Pels double Steph at half court, how many more impactful offensive players have you watched in your lifetime? More impactful. That's a tough one. So I grew up in the 90s, so I would say Jordan has to be there. But I will just say this: I don't think teams played him with the sort of he wasn't extending out to 30 feet. So it's just that alone is going to bring a certain it's going to disrupt your base defense much more than MJ sort of dominating in the areas that he dominated, mid-range, stuff like that. So in terms of like changing how you play defense, I don't think just on that alone and just basing my opinion on that, I don't think I've seen anyone more impactful than Steph, to be completely honest. And then you talk about the plus minus. I mean, it's historic how much better the Warriors have been with him on the court versus with him off. So, obviously MJ is a better player overall, but in just terms of the offense alone, I think you have a great argument to say it's in my lifetime, it's Steph.
Yeah, the only two, and I mean, I was, when Jordan retired the first time, I was 7, but I've certainly watched a lot of Jordan tape. I'm very familiar with what he does. I've watched every playoff game he's probably ever played. That's on YouTube anyway. Yeah. The other two that come to mind for me are like 2000, 2001 Shaq.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Because it was an auto double. So just like that in itself, like if you're auto doubling every post or else you're getting thrown into the rim, like that opened up everything for that triangle offense in terms of kickouts. That he in the inside out way instead of the outside in way, that was an extraordinarily impactful offensive player.
That's a great one.
Monster.
That peak Shaq might be the answer.
Yeah, and then
even when he was wrap up the Shaq point. Even when he was with Miami, I remember Dirk talked about it in their first finals matchup where, Dwayne Wade was the MVP and he was putting up all the scoring numbers, but Dirk was very clear. Shaq is the one that's tilting everything. He's the one, and this is Shaq at 75%, maybe 50% of what he was at his peak. So, peak Shaq was just. There won't be anyone like him again. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that you could never single cover him, just like what that does to a defense is crazy. And then the only other one, and it was a shorter stint, but like peak Rockets Harden.
Yeah.
Had defenses doing some crazy things, like forcing him inside the arc. Remember the Bucks did that? They played behind him for a stretch to like force him into floater range.
The Jazz did that. Yep.
Because they couldn't deal with the threat of the step back and then the driving game if you overplayed that.
Yep.
He was a unique machine those couple of years at his peak that really warped defenses in a very unique way. Now, it wasn't as pleasing to watch,
right?
But it was as dominant as anything I've seen. It was.
So the playing behind Harden thing is just one of the craziest things to see. Like if you've seeing it for the first time, that was like the most wild defensive alignment because you were literally inviting him to penetrate and get downhill. And then remember, it was Clint Capella catching lobs, and then Harden at that time had a great float game. So it was like you're just allowing these two other options to just be there because you were so terrified of his step back. So yeah, I mean, the Rockets Harden is I know he's got a lot of issues now and all that, but just he was an absolute game changer of the highest order at that point.
Yeah, no, 100%. And look, I think LeBron's and hasn't been mentioned yet. And I think if you combine kind of just like transition and what the threat of him in transition meant to teams, and look, man, like LeBron in like 2016, just like dominating over the half court and just passing, and I mean, it's hard to say he's not in that conversation. And yet I probably wouldn't put him in that conversation. I think it's a little bit different, but overall, obviously LeBron, the whole package is different than any of these guys. Right. But just as like a half court, what it did to a defense, I'd put those other options ahead of him slightly.
And then Jokic, obviously.
Oh hell, forgot about him.
He's right. He's getting there. Right. He's getting there, and he's one of those guys. There just isn't a good answer, because he can just destroy a single coverage situation. His post-up game is incredible. His shooting now has gotten to the point where it just feels like every shot he's taking is going in. And then you combine that with the passing and all the things he does. And then the last guy I'll just mention, I don't think he's there yet, but in a year, maybe even before we end this year, is Luka in that conversation? Has he figured some things out? Is he playing with the right downhill threat and Derek Lively, that he's just allowing a little more space and that lob threat? He's close. He's certainly not on the level of guys we've talked about, but it just feels like this year, at least to start the season, he's having that year where if he's the MVP of the league at the end of it, I will not be shocked.
No, certainly could be in that conversation very soon. I think adding some variety and quick decision making would go a long way with him. But yeah, man, he's quite special. All right. Well, I think that is it from us. Thank you guys all for joining, for asking all your great questions. Always a blast to kind of break it down with you, DJ. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you're listening to the feed later, please leave a 5-star rating and a review. We always appreciate the good word getting out. We love doing this, and every review, every comment helps a lot. So we appreciate all you guys. Stay well. Talk to you all soon.